It's time for Campaign Chronicles on France 24, and there are less than 2 weeks to go before a runoff vote between Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande. Joining me for our daily countdown is our French politics editor, Mark Pellman. Hi there, Mark.
Good evening.
And our media editor, James Creedon, who has the reaction in the press and on the blogs as well. Hello to
Good
you,
evening,
James. Now, two candidates speaking today, François Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy. They're both trying to rally those last few votes before the runoff, aren't they?
Yes, and one target is the National Front, not the party, but the 6.4 million French who voted in favor of the National Front last Sunday, giving it a historical record. The National Front is now eliminated, so both candidates are trying to woo those voters, and they do this in a different way. First of all, Nicolas Sarkozy, because he's the one who needs those votes the most, he clearly explained that there would be no agreement between the Conservative Party and the National Front. Let's take a listen to the president.
There will be no deal with the National Front. There will be no ministers from the National Front.
That's the theory. But in practice, we've seen Nicolas Sarkozy assaulting François Hollande on two hot-button issues that are directly related to the National Front electorate. The first issue is the so-called right to vote for foreigners in local elections. This has been an old promise from the socialists dating back to the 1980s. They were never able to implement it for lack of will or lack of majority in parliament. However, François Hollande has said that he would grant foreigners, extra European Union foreigners, the right to vote in municipal elections in 2013. Clearly, Nicolas Sarkozy claims that this shouldn't happen, that granting them the right to vote means giving foreigners too much influence on French political life. So we'll take a listen to Nicolas Sarkozy today in eastern France in his appeal to National Front voters and warning them what would happen if they choose François Hollande, and then we'll listen to the answer from the socialist contender.
It's my duty as a candidate to say to these women and men, if you don't vote, if you don't join us, then you give voting rights to immigrants in France. Is that what you want?
It is part of my 60 commitments. It was the case in the first round. It is still the case now. Conditions will be strictly imposed. Exactly the same rules as for EU foreigners. This is my position. Everybody knows it. It is better to be consistent than contradictory.
So Nicolas Sarkozy warning the National Front voters that if they elect socialist, foreigners will have the right to vote. François Hollande, a little bit uncomfortable because he said, this isn't my program, I won't change it. However, he indicated that he would put a bill to Parliament only in 2013, reflecting the concerns of some in his party who are saying, well, maybe this is not what we want to prioritize right now because you need some of those votes from the far right.
So many people voted far right. All right, now, James, the right-wing newspaper Le Figaro has gone big on this today. They're not letting Hollande let it slide at all, are they?
That's right. Hollande persiste et signe, so he goes ahead and signs off on, well, figuratively speaking, I suppose, on this policy to give the right to vote to foreigners. So you can see that the right-wing paper is certainly putting that out there on a day when most of the papers are actually more concerned about Nicolas Sarkozy's statement as regards the Front National. That is, he in a sort of roundabout way, said that the Front National, if you have elected representatives, they are, in that sense, not incompatible with the Republic, which is a way of sort of, how would you say, Mark, kind of legitimizing their policies. And that's the front page, just to quickly show it first.
This is the other side of the political
Le
spectrum.
Pen, Le Pen compatible with the Republic, which is a shock in France, right?
Right, obviously, because for years, Le Pen has been considered as someone on the fringe and outside of the democratic model, although he participated in many elections. But clearly, Nicolas Sarkozy is saying, okay, the National Front might not be nice, but people who vote for the National Front are not devils.
Right.
And it's not just Libération, the editorial in today's the front page editorial in today's Le Monde. I think we have the electronic version of it there. And here, the end does not justify all means is the headline of that particular headline. And what they make a number of key points. He's crossed a line for the Le Monde newspaper. This empathy with the far-right voters is a political policy error because what he's basically saying is it strengthens the far right and it weakens the traditional right. And it's not just a political error, it's a moral error because the end does not justify the means. So they're really being very strong.
So that's foreigners voting, but also there's an issue, isn't there, about immigrants that don't have paper who are here illegally.
Exactly. And there you see that politics is not always about speaking the truth. We're going to watch Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande speaking about granting legal papers to illegal immigrants. Basically, you have an argument. Nicolas Sarkozy is saying François Hollande is ready to grant legal papers to all illegal immigrants, and François Hollande is saying something that appears to be different. Well, judge by yourself.
Illegal immigration cannot be approved because it's illegal. They should be given legal papers on a case-by-case principle. The incoming president wants to scare people because that's the only way his voice can be heard, by making people scared of my policies. Case by case, I say.
Mr. Hollande said last night on television that he will give legal papers to every illegal immigrant. Yes, everyone. For him, it's for everyone.
So one person says, I'll give legal papers on a case-to-case basis, and the other says, well, it means he will give legal papers to everyone. Go and understand, but clearly this is politics, and Nicolas Sarkozy wants to make sure the message is understood by far-right voters. François Hollande is going to open the doors of immigration, of France to immigration, and they would have voting rights if they come. You see the picture.
All right, and a lot of far-right voters do live in Alsace, don't they, I believe, where Nicolas Sarkozy gave his speech today in the town of Cernay. Luke Brown was also there. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
We're here in Cernay in Alsace in the east of the country. On Sunday, Marine Le Pen actually came out on top in local results of the election. And that means it does really fit in well with a visit and a rally being held by Nicolas Sarkozy and his current strategy. He is, of course, currently trying to woo far-right voters, and that is with a message that is quite close to that used by the National Front.
I don't condone this choice. I say that we have to hear their cry, we have to take it into account. We have to have something to offer the French people who were tempted by this vote so that they can join us.
Of course, this is all part of the electoral pragmatism before the second round. Marine Le Pen's share of the vote, just under 18%, can't be ignored. But the open courting of the far right does draw a mixed response in the crowd.
Ça vous choque qu'il parle autant aux valeurs qui sont très proches du Front National?
A bit, yes.
Un peu. Si. Yes. Si. Yes.
Why shouldn't Mr. Sarkozy be on Marine Le Pen's side when Mr. Hollande, who thinks he's apparently the next president, sides with Mélenchon?
It's legitimate and it will work.
For Nicolas Sarkozy, there's no shame in talking to far-right National Front voters. Indeed, he says it's the UMP party that has to hear that message of frustration and not the National Front. It's not the sole goal of his message today at this rally. He did talk a lot about the Golden Rule, cutting the deficit and the debt, and that's perhaps directed at the moderate centrist François Bayrou. It is going to be a tough balancing act for Nicolas Sarkozy, though, between those two options in the hunt for votes in the next 2 weeks.
Luke Brown there reporting earlier. Well, the frontrunner, François Hollande, meanwhile, has been addressing journalists in Paris. He says the media will be treated differently if he gets elected. He also explained how he plans to reform Europe's fiscal pact. Clovis Casali has more.
Only two candidates left in the presidential race, and François Hollande wants to highlight the differences between him and Nicolas Sarkozy. The socialist candidate vows to treat journalists differently and hold press conferences every 6 months. This one is designed as a rehearsal. The incoming president has disrespected the media on too many occasions, according to Hollande.
I will try to distinguish private life from public life. And if a journalist is impertinent, I will not blame him for it in public or mock him and make his colleagues laugh. I know they can be cruel, just like some socialists can be.
French voters will be choosing between a socialist and a conservative, and beyond the ideological distinction, Hollande is keen to stress the differences in terms of style.
It's a choice between two personalities, as you're aware now and might have been for a while. It's also a choice between two visions of what public life should be, and even of what the Republican model is. We have two different manifestos, and there's more. The incumbent president wants to divide people.
Hollande, on the other hand, claims to be a candidate who can unite the French, but on a European level, he might struggle to reach a consensus with his plan to call for a reform of the fiscal pact. Among the proposed measures, the financing of infrastructure projects through Eurobonds, asking the European Investment Bank to take on a more active role and introduce a tax on financial transactions, with all member states who agree. François Hollande told reporters he was extremely confident ahead of the second round of the election. He still enjoys a comfortable lead in the polls.
Mark, very quickly, what are the latest opinion polls saying?
Well, François Hollande seems to be right to be confident. 55% of voting intentions in round 2, 45%. All the polls show similar figures. Nicolas Sarkozy hopes he can change this.
10 points between them. All right, Mark Perelman, James Creedon, thanks very much indeed. That wraps up Campaign Chronicles. When we come back, we'll have all the latest international headlines for you.